Okay. All right. So thank you guys for coming today. Really does mean a lot that you guys would take the time out of your day and just come and watch me speak. I know it's quarantine, but you know, things are still going on. I think things are starting to pick back up. So thank you guys for being here. I just want to start off by saying the following ideas, these are not my ideas whatsoever. I came up with 0 of this. This is all PRI intellectual property. So what is PRI? Well, PRI is all based around the asymmetries of the human body. So if I were to cut myself down the middle vertically and then put myself on a scale, my right side would probably weigh a little bit more than my left side. Why? Because we have just more stuff on our right side. Look at our liver. Our liver is a huge organ, and it's right directly on leaning on our right side. We have our colon, to a lesser extent, our gallbladder. And we also have 3 lobes of our lung on our right versus left because our heart's on our left. So that's kind of like the starting block. But we also want to hone in on this diaphragm here because the right dome is obviously larger than the left. If you look at any anatomy textbook ever, you're going to see this. You're going to see an image similar to this. And that's because it's just like a fundamental asymmetry. So because this right dome is bigger than the left, it's positionally better able to work in respiration. It's sitting on top of that liver nicely. And the left diaphragm is smaller, and it also has less leverage on that spine. So it's going to descend. It's just going to want to stay descended because there's nothing really blocking it. Whereas on the right side, you have that liver. So for a diaphragm to contract and descend, it needs to be able to ascend again. Whereas the left side is more able to stay descended, whereas the right side, the liver is just kind of in the way. So it's positionally better able to fill up the lungs. So if we go to this brain asymmetry right here, we have more motor neurons, cortical motor neurons on the right side of our brain, which controls the left side of our body. And then vice versa, obviously, for the left side of the brain and the right side of our body. So wait, I think I said that right. Yeah, so we have more on our left, which control the right. That's right. So we can just sense things better on the right side. Our dexterity is going to be better on the right side. The way we can sense the ground on the right side is inherently going to be better for us as human beings. Even if you're left-handed, you're still a human being. So we're different, but we're ultimately not that different because we all have a heart on the right side or the left side. We all have 4 limbs, and we all sort of default into this position for these reasons. So this is essentially what happens looking at the body globally when we are in this left AIC, right BC pattern. Our pelvis is going to be turned to the right. And then in order for us not to walk in a straight or a circle to the right, so we can walk straight ahead, we're going to rotate our trunks to the left to basically even ourselves out. And then following that, our neck is going to be side bent to the left and rotating left as well a little bit. So I want you guys to, next time it's socially acceptable to be within 6 feet of another person, watch social circles. Watch people talk in like a circle. A lot of them are going to be in this position. Watch speakers present when they're standing up. They're really comfortable in this position. When they're trying to find comfort, they sort of lean on this right side. And then I'd encourage you also to go have a conversation with someone, get in this position, and then, whoops, I don't know why my slides are changing like that. And then have a conversation in this, and then in the middle of the conversation, switch to the inverse of this with your left foot back. It feels different. It just feels more awkward. So this is with everyone. If you're a human being, this is probably where you're going to be, starting off at least. So what is the left anterior chain? This, I'm not super concerned if you guys don't remember what this is. I just want to define the terms and explain how PRI describes this. So it's muscles that have a significant influence on respiration, rotation of the trunk, rib cage, and lower extremities. It's going to be this chain of muscles right here that you see in the image. It's composed of the diaphragm, psoas, iliacus, TFL, biceps femoris, hamstring muscle, and also your lateral quad, your vastus lateralis. So when you have your left anterior chain active, you are going to be in right stance. That would be representing your right foot on the ground and your left foot in swing off of it. With right AIC, that is left stance. That's just the inverse. So the pelvis. The pelvis is what we need to really look at for the foundation, really, of kind of like how we see how we're asymmetrical represented within the joints. The pelvis is going to be rotated right and posteriorly oriented. So if I get my pelvic model out, there it is. The pelvis is going to be like this. So you have this right side that is more biased towards the joint actions of extension, adduction, and internal rotation. We're talking about the movement of this innominate bone right here. On the left, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be external rotation, abduction, and flexion. That's what's happening at this bone. So in essence, you can kind of look at it like inhalation and exhalation. When we inhale, our pelvis does this as a whole. And then when we exhale, it does this as a whole. So you can kind of look at it as if the left pelvis is more in an inhaled state and the right is in more of an exhaled or compressed state. So musculature, because the right side is more prone towards exhalation, compression, it's going to have muscles that are internal rotators. Adductors, extensors are going to be more concentrically oriented on the right side. That just basically means it's in more of a shortened leveraged position. Whereas the left side is just going to be the opposite. Glute max, ER, abductors, flexors of the pelvis as it relates to gait, which we will talk about. So this is easy to think about because what the right side has, the left side needs. Whatever the left side needs, the right side has, because it's just gait, it's just stance, it's just this, because we need to do this. But we're more prone towards this. But the goal isn't to just get in our left hip, it's to be able to get out of our left hip into our right hip and vice versa. So let's now kind of dive into gait, because I think this is really what PRI is. It's all about just movement. And gait's something we do all the time, so relating it to this is going to help a lot. So the left pelvis, because it's biased towards swing and expansion, it's going to be biased in this pelvic orientation of external rotation. Acetabular femoral external rotation. That's the pelvis moving off the femur. Because gait, when your foot's on the ground, it's fixed. Your gait is this. That's gait. It's not this necessarily. It's more of this. So when we look at the right side, that's going to be more acetabular femoral internal rotation, where the pelvis is moving over the femur and we're loading our body weight onto that foot. So what? Like, why does any of this even matter? Well, the right pelvis is better at accepting more weight and being strong. It's better at accepting load, just being pushing is going to be more the left. Think about a squat, a hip shift and a squat. And think about all the hip shifts you've seen. Where do people usually default? More into the right hip. You see more right hip shifts than left. And the reason for that is because we can load the right side better. When crap hits the fan, we're going to go right because that's where we're comfortable. Now, if you think about propulsion, pushing, why do most people prefer to jump off of their left leg? It's for this reason. That glute max is in an advantageous position to push. We're biased towards AFER, where we can push. If you can jump off your right leg, that's a different story. So we can talk about that maybe another day. So force plate examples. I can't just say all this stuff and not give you guys some evidence. That would be ridiculous. So I've had the pleasure of putting lots and lots of athletes and general population people on a force plate, hundreds. And this is what you see all the time. I'm not making this up. This is really what you see. On the left, this is a track athlete. And she's a good athlete, but she's not even in a quarter squat yet. She is in an 8th squat, if that. And she has 67% of her weight on her right foot. She's only on her heels a lot because I've worked with her before and she knows to be more on her heels when she's loading. But you can see here that even with a good athlete in the beginning of this phase, she is buried in her right side. Now over here in the middle, you have this older gentleman. He's in his early 60s, and you can just tell how stiff he is by just looking at his back. But this guy can't find his heels whatsoever. Not even a little bit on the right. He's just stiff, but he's still favoring his right side. Now on the right here, you have a volleyball player, and she is in the most classic example of a left AIC pattern. All I told her. I was just like, okay, here's a stick. Show me a good overhead squat with your feet neutral. And she got to what she thought was neutral, which was her left foot ahead of her right foot and 61% of her weight on her right foot. And then she's more on her forefoot on the left swing, right loading. This is absolutely classic. To her, neutral means her left foot ahead of her right foot. But people don't know this unless they can actually see it. We have testing that can show it. And ultimately, this is why I think a force plate is a really good tool to have. So the takeaways are Right side needs more external rotation, abduction, needs more inhalation. The left pelvis needs more internal rotation and adduction, needs more exhalation, needs more adductors, anterior glute med, obliques, hamstrings. We need a left hamstring more than a right. So I'm going to show you guys how I would take a very similar exercise, in fact, the same exercise, and get two entirely different outcomes using these principles. This is acetabular femoral internal rotation. That's AFIR. So how can I train more loading mechanics, more of this stance mechanics on a single leg hinge? Well, I can turn my pelvis towards my stance foot side, getting my pelvis over my femur into internal rotation, and then going into that hinge position. Or I can push my pelvis off my femur, and then I would, oops, hang on. There we go. Or I could push my pelvis off my femur, and this would give me a lot more glute max and abductors. So if you need more of that AFER on a side, you can do the same thing, just change the pelvic orientation. On the last exercise, I was feeling lots of adductors, glute med, those pelvic over femoral muscles. And on this exercise, I was feeling a lot more abductors, glute max. So this is probably the most important slide in the entire presentation. So my mouth is very dry. I need to get a drink of this. Okay, so let's take all this information. So we need a left hamstring more than our right hamstring, more left adductor than right adductor. So we could take this and be like, well, okay, let's just give someone a ton of hamstring curls then. So what that would be doing, even if you're not consciously aware of it, if you were to do that, just give them some prone hamstring curls and hope that'll get the job done. What you're saying is, I want my hamstring to turn on, which will hopefully change the position of my skeleton, my pelvis. And then hopefully if I do this enough times and with repetition, I will get that hamstring more concentrically oriented, which will change the position of my pelvis, which will allow my brain to accept that change because that muscle is stronger. Like hopefully my brain will take that if I keep doing it over and over again. But in my mind, I think it works the exact opposite way of that. I think the brain is selecting a pattern of stability that is most metabolically efficient for the constraints on our system, which could be limb length, previous injuries. It's trying to protect that area that was traumatized in the past, flexibility, mobility, all these different factors. The brain is assessing and saying, what is the most stable position for my body to be in? And for a lot of people, that's in this left AIC pattern. So we need to think about then, how are we going to change the position of someone's skeleton and then orient that skeleton in a way where the muscles are going to be able to work in the orientations we want them to work in. And we can do that by respecting gait references. So when my heel strikes the ground, my hamstring should kick on. So maybe instead of doing prone hamstring curls, I could do something where I'm making a neurological association between my heel, a posterior pelvic tilt, which is what happens when your heel strikes the ground, concentric hamstring activity, left abs maybe, and then heel reference. So that my brain is trained that when my heel strikes the ground, I'm going to get those things. Because with hamstring curls, there's no reference. You're just doing hamstring curls. So none of that is ultimately going to matter if we can't breathe through it correctly. Because we have two branches of our nervous system. Any input you get, it's going one of two directions. It's either going to sympathetic or parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. It's relaxation. Think of it like meditation. Sympathetic is fight or flight. It's like go, go, go. If you puff out your chest really tall right here, I already feel more alert right now just doing this. This is sympathetic. Extension tone is sympathetic. But a lot of people live there. And that's not where we want people to be all the time. We need to be sympathetic. I hope people can get sympathetic when they need to, but I also hope they can get parasympathetic when they need to. So my goal with these people, with anyone I'm working with, is to have them breathe through it. Because if they're just doing this on a corrective, that's sympathetic drive. You're just jacking up their system. You're upregulating them. Or I want to downregulate. I want the brain to let go and allow changes to happen. I want it to be like, wow, this actually might be not a bad place for me to live. I actually can get comfortable here. If you do that enough times, you change the input in a good way, you're going to get a good output. So the last thing I want to talk about before we get into exercises is this idea of a zone of apposition. So this is a big time idea because air is going to follow the path of least resistance when we breathe. So it's just like a gas, you know? Think of it like chambers. If you're going to pump a bunch of gas into chambers, if you close off a chamber, gas isn't going to go there. So if our rib cage can't expand, if we can't get air to actually expand 360 degrees in our rib cage, then we're not going to be able to get air in there. So what do? We start to get this kind of belly breathing strategy. Air goes forward and our ribs flare up. That's why you see when athletes train with their shirts off, you'll see that lower rib flare a lot because that's what's going on. Air is just going to the path of least resistance, which is their belly. But our lungs aren't in our stomach, so that's probably not great. And if air is always pushing us forward into our belly and we can't get air back, then our skeleton's always going to want to go forward. Because we have 20,000 breaths a day, that's 20,000 reps of going forward. So now this is the first exercise. I'm going to go through a couple of correctives, then I'm going to get into how I apply this to the weight room. So just a really basic corrective here would be this 90-90 hip lift. So here, I'm making a neurological association between my heel, concentric hamstring activity, and that posterior pelvic tilt, all while breathing very controlled through it. You could do a 90-90 hip lift, or you could bring that leg up and then you can reach for it. So you would be getting left hamstring, left abs, all while staying back. Another one is a right side lying left adductor pullback. So this would be just getting more left stance, left adductor activity. So I'm feeling my heel, gait reference. I'm inhaling, pulling back, exhaling, pushing down. You have someone with a right hip shift, you give them this and then retest. I guarantee you it's better if they did it right. Exercise number 3. Left side lying right glute max. We have to be able to get out of our right hip to get in our left. If we just give them a left adductor and that's it, maybe they need to learn how to push off of that right arch too, so that they can get into their left hip in the first place. Again, if you see someone with this right side dominance all the time, this is probably a good thing to give them because that helps them get out of their right side. So here I'm just lying on my left side, getting left abs by hiking up my left side. I'm tucking my pelvis so I don't extend. And I'm pushing my right knee forward, sensing my right arch, sensing it, and sensing my left heel. So here I'm getting left adductor, right glute max, left abs. Whatever's going on one side of the body, the opposite is happening on the other. If I'm in external rotation on one side, I'm in internal rotation on the other. I hope so. That would be ideal. So I like the idea of sensing because that's better than feeling. People know how to feel things, but just giving the word sense is much more powerful because that's going to help them. It's almost like a calming word. It's almost like this isn't a strength exercise. This is a sensing exercise because this is all just neurological. Number 4, just all 4 breathing. We got to get air in our backs, right? I talk about that all the time. This is one way to do it. All 4s, elbows slightly unlocked. A lot of people jam their upper backs towards the ceiling. I don't think that's great. You're just locking out your system. Instead, I'm relaxed. I'm tucked until I feel my hamstrings a little bit. And then I'm just breathing gently through it, getting all that air out, all that air out. I'm going to make a post later today about why that's important. And I don't want to waste too much time on it, but essentially, if you're not getting all the air out, you're not exhaling. You're not getting a zone of apposition. So let's talk about the weight room now. So if we're going to take these principles and apply them to the weight room, they're just that. They're just principles. There's no magic. I made up a lot of these exercises just because I use the principles. So you could take these things and you can adjust exercises based off of them because you know what to look for. So alternation. One arm comes forward, the other comes back. That's easy. Just apply it to a dumbbell bench press. Alternation is gait. When we walk, one arm needs to come forward, the other needs to come back. That's human movement. Zone of apposition, can we keep our ribs down? Can we keep a stacked, that goes into the next point too. Can we keep a stacked thorax over a pelvis, moving as one unit? Can we squat and not have our butts shoot back and go into this huge extension tone? Can we at least do that? Maybe that's good for developing strength, but can we do the opposite when we need to? Unilateral movement. Most of life takes place on one leg. Most of sports take place on one leg. Gait is mostly on one leg. So I love bilateral exercises. I don't want to demonize them. I think they're awesome. But maybe instead of doing, 90% bilateral exercises, 75%, 2/3. Maybe we should think about doing 2/3 unilateral. Frontal plane. Lots of athletes, lots of people are really good at the sagittal plane. And even the transverse plane sometimes. They're really good at external rotation, just like getting their knees out. But frontal plane is very important. We have to be able to go side to side. Frontal plane is so much of human movement. And I think it's not getting enough attention as much as it should. So just a really quick sagittal plane activity here would just be like a foam roller on a foam roller bridge. This is a lot of hamstrings. I'm reaching to engage my abs, and I'm exhaling until I feel my abs. This is a burner. It's a really good one. I love this as deadlift prep because what am I getting here? Abs and hamstrings. What do I need on deadlift? Abs and hamstrings. What do most people not get on a deadlift? They get back extensors and they get a lot of quads sometimes, a lot of glutes, but are they getting hamstrings and abs? Number 2, we could do a alternating landmine press. I love this. This is really good. So ribs back, keeping my stacked thorax over a pelvis. That med ball is there to lock in my pelvis so I can't rotate through it. I'm rotating through my rib cage. Adding alternation is a no-brainer. It's so easy. And then we have a wall-referenced roller hinge. If you want to teach people to get their pelvis over their femur, I love this because this is really effective at giving them a constraint, a reference to push in with that knee. So they're going to have to engage that adductor. They're going to sense their heel. They're going to feel their glute med, hopefully, and left abs. Another one here, we have a landmine one-arm alternating row in acetabular femoral internal rotation. I would not give this to someone on day one. That would probably not be the best idea ever, but this is probably one of my favorite rows. This requires a lot of concentration. I got my pelvis over my femur, adductor, glute med, abs, and I'm moving through this range of motion. Neutral spine, abs are on, things are good here. Another point I would like to make on this is you can make it really heavy too. So that's an added bonus. Here we have an example of what's going on one side, the opposite is going on the other. Again, not something I'd give it to someone on day one, but this is really good for getting adduction on the lower leg, abduction on the top leg with left abs. That way I'm not cheating because you guys, I'm sure you've seen people at the gym training and they're on like a hip abduction machine and they're doing something like this. That's just using their ab wall. They're not actually, doing anything with their abductors. That's just a right ab exercise or a left ab exercise. So just to like put it all together in a straightforward full body, super general lift. There's nothing special about this. This is just me kind of illustrating how it could potentially look. So what you have starting off, 90-90 alternating crossover. We're assuming this person's a left AIC. So in this right side dominant pattern, they need more left side stuff. So left hamstring, left abs, all 4 breathing, getting some rib cage expansion. So I know that they can keep that stacked thorax over a pelvis when they're doing their training. And a left adductor pullback, just 2 sets of 5, because people don't want to like sit there and like even 2 sets, honestly, guys, is pushing it sometimes. So I like to keep it realistic. 2 sets is probably the maximum people can stand because they're here to train. They're not here to breathe. That's also important to consider. And kettlebell armbar, one by 8 each side. Isometric split squat, love me some isos, and reverse walking for just 1 set of 10. Because we're going forward so much, I like to get people going backwards sometimes. The first is a lower pull trap bar deadlift, alternating dumbbell press for an upper push, and then that foam roller hamstring bridge, because that's going to help them facilitate and sense heels, hamstrings, abs on that upcoming trap bar deadlift, and hopefully not overextend on that alternating bench press. And then in the second block, we have a safety squat bar, split squat in AFIR on the left, acetabular femoral external rotation on the right. This is totally acceptable to do. I don't see why we wouldn't do this in a lot of cases. It's okay. An asymmetrical body requires an asymmetrical approach. So getting them to get that pelvic sense they're not getting in real life when they're not when they're not in the gym, to train that in the split stance position, I think has a lot of value. Neutral grip pull-ups for an upper body pull, ab wheel, good anti-extension exercise. 3A, landmine one arm alternating row, landmine, one arm alternating press, and then a side plank. But you could consider there is a world where you would consider giving someone just two times more on their left and right side. Sometimes that can be too much. Sometimes you don't want to overcomplicate things like that. But I'm just trying to illustrate that it's totally acceptable to think about doing more on the left than the right sometimes. Maybe more right side single leg plyos. I don't know. So guys, thank you for listening. I have a limited time offer for this presentation only for everyone that came today. I have a coaches club. If you guys like this content, I have a bunch of courses on this within my coaches club. It's way more detailed than this presentation. For this today only, you can get 6 months access. It's usually $20 a month, but I will give 6 months for $80. That is a very good deal. I'm not going to offer it again. So if you guys are interested, I'm going to send out that email right after this. And I also do coaching consultations. I do one-on-one. It's usually a 3-month program. If you guys know like stuff about the infrasternal angle, we get into that. We can do some business stuff. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it. And also I have a group program rolling right now. It's too late to get into it now because it started in the beginning of May, but now the next one's going to be July 1st. So you can always keep that in the back of your mind. So thank you guys for listening. I genuinely appreciate it. And I really hope you guys got some value out of it. Now, if you have any questions, I will definitely take them. Thanks, Connor. PRI acknowledges ISAs. There's a group of folks who do. Yeah, so I had Neil Holland on my podcast last Saturday, and he made a fantastic point about this. He doesn't need the infrasternal angle because he does PRI. And PRI is really, it's not the same thing. Like when you do PRI, I just had Sean Light on my podcast, like just before this, and he made a really good point. When he's a strength and conditioning coach, when he's a personal trainer, he puts that hat on. But then when he does PRI, he puts his PRI hat and takes the other one off because they're not the same thing. You can take these principles and apply them like I just showed you, but ultimately when you're doing PRI, it's all about sense. It's so neuro. Whereas the infrasternal angle, I think it's really good for training. I use it all the time. In fact, I love it. And I think that there's a lot of people who do recognize its value in training, but not everyone needs it for rehabilitation purposes necessarily. Hey, Connor, why would we see a left hip shift in the squat? So we could say this for a couple of reasons. Generally, when I see a left hip shift, it's usually a conscious or unconscious thing. If it's unconscious, it's usually the brain is so oriented to the right that they're desperately trying to find stability and they're over on their left side. They could have had a previous injury to the right side. So they're trying to get in their left side because that's where they feel most stable, path of least resistance. So usually it's an overcorrection in both senses. But if it is conscious, usually that person did have an injury or they're like, man, I'm buried in my right side. I need to get over to my left side more. But what I will say is if you do see a hip shift to either direction, what I would recommend, if it's on the right, I would think about giving them like a left adductor and left hamstring and then have them re-squat and see if that made a difference. And if it didn't, just say this, like, I want you to acknowledge the existence of your left heel. I want you to know it's there. I don't want you to lean on it even 1%, but I want you to just consciously recognize and acknowledge that it's there. Because what that's going to do is that's just going to keep them aware of it. So like that in of itself is also going to help them get more weight on it unconsciously. Because I want to drive unconscious patterns, not conscious patterns. Do you think that a left AIC, right BC pattern could cause right adductor strain in the squat hold due to lack? Yeah. I see right adductor strains all the time because that right adductor is so concentrically oriented that it can get, when there's a lot of stress placed on that muscle or it has to elongate rapidly, like in a plyo, for example, then you see a lot of strains there because that muscle cannot properly elongate. It's lacking eccentric orientation. Let's see. For a coach that's new to PRI, how would you advise them to start implementing it into their coaching? Yeah, like those exercises start really simple. Just you cannot go wrong giving everyone a left hamstring and left abs. Literally, you just can't do it. It's very like, it'd be one in crazy odds if that were to harm them. So I would say give them a left hamstring, give them a left adductor, and think about these principles. Just do alternation. Instead of doing your dumbbell bench press, just start doing alternation. Just add in some reaches, add in some more frontal plane. If you just did that, I think, man, it would be so much better. Would you recommend the PRI breathing exercises after lifting off? Yeah, I would, 100%. Because think about this, like when you leave a weight training session, you are probably really sympathetic. You're probably like fired up. Your nervous system is like, it's upregulated. Like, yeah, I hope so, because you just trained. But maybe to facilitate good recovery, to kind of like kickstart that process, you could give them 10 breaths, 5 breaths on 2 exercises. Down regulate them, give them some hamstrings, give them some abs, and then boom, you just started the recovery process. Got them more parasympathetic. With the sideline left adductor squeeze and pushing femur forward, was the sense through the feet supposed to be left heel and right arch? That was, yeah, you would want to sense your left heel for sure on that left adductor pullback. I probably do right heel too, just to make sure that things aren't sliding. But yeah, you could sense right arch 100%. You really want to sense that right arch whenever you're doing more like late propulsive activities, like, for example, that right glute max activity, or like whenever the abductors, like AFER activities, that single leg hinge, I would want them to sense their right heel. Would you sequence double limb versus single limb exercises in a particular way for your program, like ending on a left? That's not, I've never really considered that, to be honest with you. That would not be a bad idea. Generally speaking, I'm going to start off with bilateral exercises because, you know, those are going to be the most CNS draining. But then I'm going to go more towards unilateral pretty much after that. I usually only have like 1 or 2 or 3 upper body, lower body combined bilateral exercises in my program. So the program you showed now is for a person with a left AIC. Would you recommend less volume on left versus right if someone was more neutral and less pattern? Yes. If someone was neutral and they want, I'd get after it. Like, yeah, like let at it. Like just do equal and don't worry about it for sure. Would you have seen with moms who are right-handed and shift pelvis to the left, carry child on the left pelvis? Yeah, so I do see this. And you see this with people who are injured on the right too before. So you would think if someone tore their right ACL and they're in a boot for 9 months or whatever, and then they have to lean on their left side, that would probably be better than injuring your left side, right? Not necessarily, because you're not really good at getting in your left side to begin with. So if you're going to push yourself over to the left and you're going to stay there, but you're not ready to accept that load, and you never were, without, you know, proper preparation. And this isn't in everyone, by the way, this is just in many, many, many cases. I think that could be potentially detrimental. You could start to stretch out your ligaments. You could start to hang out on that side too much. I'm not going to say that's going to happen to everyone, but you do see that quite a bit. And also a lot of people aren't really good at being in their right hip either because they've been there for so long. Is a right AIC possible? If you are born with your organs on the other side of your body, I've heard, never seen a case myself, but I've heard that you can actually, Scott, can you give some insight on this? Do you know if people can be in this pattern? I've heard of it, but I've never seen
it. Yeah, so what I would say just is that for those that are pretty new to the PRI stuff is don't think of the patterns as bad. They are normal patterns. They become a problem when you can't get out of them. And so when you want to get on your left leg, you want to be in a right AIC pattern. And so from that standpoint, it's a good thing. So that would just be my little tidbit, is that we do a right AIC is possible, and that's what we're trying to get after. But I think this person's question is probably more towards like the classifications. So I have not seen them when you start getting into some of the baseball stuff and the repetitive rotational athlete. So a professional golfer that's left-handed, or a professional left-handed baseball pitcher that has done thousands and thousands of repetitions in that direction, you can start to see some compensations the other way. So they almost do look like a right AIC pattern. So yeah. I just tell us, treat what you assess. And, you know, if you are going into it assuming that everyone is a left AIC, you might miss something. And so it's Ron and the people at PRI, I'm going off script here, will say that I might be wrong in saying this, but you want to just treat what you see. And sometimes that's how the best to learn PRI is to play around with both sides and see what that individual client needs.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think that goes back to, just because you might start off in this left AIC pattern doesn't mean you don't compensate on top of it. And this is an intro course. So no, Scott, that was awesome. I think most people compensated by the time you've seen them, especially if they're complaining about pain. So I would say that this is the foundation. There are compensations that happen on top of this all the time. So asymmetry is not a problem. I think Scott made a great point about that. Like, you could hear this presentation and go, well, like, man, I really don't want to be in a left AIC, but I would hope you do want to be in a left AIC, because the goal isn't to just be in the left hip. Like I said, it's to do this and it's to do this. So the goal is never just to be on one side more than the other. It's just, we want to be able to get in and out of stance and swing. Working with team sport athletes that train, say, 3 times a week plus a game, where would you place PRI-based principles when considering their current training loads will likely overpower the adaptations you are intending to implement? So following on with that, would decisions change from building competency versus capacity? Okay, I'll answer the first part first. So I think when it comes to these athletes that are in season, the PRI stuff, that's when I think it can be really useful. But I think it's a double-edged sword here. So think of like, I think a track athlete, like a sprinter, is a really good example to use here. So if you have a sprinter that's in this extension dominant pattern, that pattern is what makes them really good at what they do. That extension pattern is awesome. And I would hope that they have it. But there's a delicate balance between taking someone completely out of their pattern versus being able to get them to downregulate. So I think that the PRI stuff is so good for getting people to downregulate, to get that parasympathetic input going, which is obviously very necessary. So I think the PRI stuff is extremely useful in season for that reason. But if we're hammering them all the time with it, that could potentially inhibit their performance to some degree in some cases. So I just want to make that, like, it's a double-edged sword. But you also have to just, if you're smart about it, if you're logical, I think you won't have any problems. Following on from that, would decisions change from building complexity versus capacity? I'm not sure. I don't really think so. I think that I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that in terms of like exercises or in terms of like the adaptations. But I think that, no, I think you would really treat everything the same, like keep doing what you're doing, but it's just a tool in the toolbox. Because if you're a strength coach and all you did was PRI, I think that would be, you wouldn't have very good athletes. So I think this is just a tool. Go take other courses, go do FRC, go do DNS, go do all that fun stuff. But understand that if you can't get neutral, like I'm sure FRCs, I've never taken a course, so I can't speak on it. I've only talked to a lot of people who have taken a lot of courses. So I have never taken a course from FRC. But from what I understand, and I could be wrong, FRC doesn't first think about getting the skeleton neutral first. And I think that if you're going to build end range isometric strength and you're going to work in those positions, it might be more valuable to get neutral first and then have at it. But if you're just going to force end range of motion on a joint that's not in a neutral position, I don't know if that's the best possible way of going about it. As far as programming goes, after the initial breathing exercises that help to signal the parasympathetic system, it would be counterproductive to program plyos or SAQ training immediately afterwards. That's a great question. And this is what I would say about that. You hear this often, and it's a very fair question of like, so I do these exercises at the beginning, which are parasympathetic driven, and then you're going to have them go do sympathetic driven exercise. That doesn't make sense. But it's really minimal. Like the amount of drive I'm going to get from someone, parasympathetic speaking, in terms of like a couple of sets of 5 breaths is not in any way going to inhibit what you're going to produce in plyos or whatever you're doing that day. Because just your warm up after that, like getting upright and moving, get the blood flowing, you're going to become sympathetic in no time at all. It's going to happen really quick. So I would also say that with that in mind, like I think it's good before and after the lift. And again, like, it's really about positioning that I care about when I'm doing warm-ups. It's like, am I facilitating that heel reference with hamstrings and good skeletal positioning? Can I get them to sense the right things when they go to stack their thorax over their pelvis, et cetera? If someone has right side scoliosis and thoracic spine, can PRI help to adjust? Yeah, I mean, you could kind of make the argument that everyone has scoliosis to some degree because of this, but it's obviously going to vary from person to person. I don't know if that's like a fair thing to say, but in terms of like thinking about spinal curvature, to some degree, we're all kind of biased to a slight degree of it. So I think PRI is really all about that. Unless you have something that's really structural. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a doctor. So I can't really answer this with a ton of confidence because I don't know your situation. But I think that, yeah, PRIs would probably really help with that. SAQ plows training not needed in the same. Are they? Oh, I think I already answered that. Does anyone have any questions? Good questions, by the way. Those were super solid. I'm going to be here for forever, guys. So if you're all done, you're free to go. If not, I'll be around. Thank you, guys.